Welcome to the Relaxed Dog Podcast, the podcast where the dogs are the stars of the show. Welcome to episode 95 of the Relaxed Dog Podcast, sponsored by therelaxeddog.com. Thank you for finding this little show. I am your host, Robert Ober, and I hope that you and your dog are well. My guest this week is Louise Harding. She is going to be sharing all about her Lurcher, Sheba. But first, make sure that you don't miss any episodes. They've been a little bit erratic lately. All you need to do is hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you are listening on. And if you enjoy the content, please make sure that you tell someone about it. And let's expand our little circle of friends. Anyway, here's the interview. Welcome to the Relaxed Dog Podcast. I am here with Louise Harding. How are you this evening?
I'm awesome, thank you. Thanks for having me.
An absolute pleasure. Now, I'm still going to ask, I know where you are, but whereabouts in the world are you?
Despite what it might sound like, I'm on the central coast in New South Wales.
And that's just down the road from me. So,
isn't it?
I know, I'm not even going to ask what the weather's been like because it has been wet and more wet. So not good at all for those people listening. We've had floods around where we are, and it's just hasn't been fun. Hasn't been fun for people wanting to take their dogs out.
It certainly hasn't. It's been quite the journey. But the sun has to shine eventually, I figure.
Shouldn't be too long and it'll be out again. Everything will dry up and we'll all get back to normal. So who are we going to talk about today?
Well, I've picked a pretty special dog. Her name was Sheba, and the way we came to get her was quite the story in itself. So I thought I'd like to talk about Sheba. She was my very first dog, and my husband's very, very first dog.
Wow. He's going to be a special story.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you to take us back in time to just before you got Sheba and tell us about the hows and whys and the story around how she came into your life.
Well, I like to think that everything happens for a reason. So I was recently married. It was the late 80s. I'm giving my age away now. It was the late 80s, and I'd been married probably 6 weeks. So we had a great wedding. It was actually in the time of Cyclone Bowler. So we're living in New Zealand. I'm a Kiwi, probably guessed that. Get married the week before Cyclone Bowler, and that was a significant weather event. And we started our married life living together, and it was all going swimmingly. And we'd been probably married 6 weeks. So my husband often mentions this, that, he has spent 6 weeks of his married life without any animals. Okay. So he had never had, his family had cats and guinea pigs, but he had never had any exposure to a dog. Not really any extended family members either had dogs. I'd always grown up with dogs, and I came from a farming background. My dad was a farmer, and we used to visit family, and there were always dogs. So to me, everyone had dogs. So I go and visit a great aunt with my mother in a town not that far from where we lived in Hamilton, called Tokeroa, for any Kiwis who might be listening. I hope this is worldwide.
It does.
So off we go to Tokoroa and to visit my auntie. And when we arrived, I noticed that there was a dog tied up to the fence. And so we go and what's the story with the dog out there tied up to the fence? Oh, wow, my daughter, they decided that their family needed a dog and they rescued it from the SPCA, but we're just waiting for them to come back and pick it up because it hasn't worked out because the dog, it's not funny. This is not funny. I should have known because the dog had chewed up the whole entranceway of the newly laid carpet. So that was a misdemeanor that couldn't be forgiven. So it was heading back to the SPCA. And in the meantime, it was tied to a fence and looked like it was pretty well behaved. Very soft, sooky dog. She was a greyhound cross. I don't know what with, because back in those days, we had dogs that had about 5 or 6 breeds in them. So they were, quite a broad mix of breeds, but mostly greyhounds, those kinds of mixes in her. And she was tied up to the fence. I went over, I felt sorry for her, and I think my auntie had made scones. So she gets a, scone. Sheba gets given a scone. She liked the scone. I wandered her around, and she was a really sweet young dog. She was probably 5 or 6 months old, all lanky and legs and unco, but pretty sooky and soft and gentle. And I took quite a shine to her. Mind you, ever since I'd been about 12, I'd been taking a shine to other people's dogs, and on my way home from school, I would acquire a few and take them and take them back. So this possibly was no different. Anyway, so we finished our visit with Auntie Molly, and we're heading home. And I saw this dog, and I just said, "Do you want to come home with us then?" And I opened the car door and she jumped in, and I went, "Okay, well, just tell your daughter that we've taken her." You probably wouldn't do that these days. So we're driving back with this dog, sitting in the back seat. She's quite tall. She was an enormous dog, and she's sitting in the back seat, happy as Larry. And it wasn't until it was probably about an hour and a half drive, probably about 20 minutes from getting back to Mum's place, where my husband was meeting us because we only had one car in those days. And she says, "So what do you think your husband's going to think?" And for a moment, I remember to the day going, "Husband? Oh, my God, husband."
Husband. Minor details.
Oh, no. I probably should have had some sort of conversation. There's no mobile phones. What was I supposed to do? So I go, "No, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. He'll really like her." So I'm sort of thinking now, not sure how this is going to pan out. Get into the driveway. He's beaten us there. He's already arrived. And I get out, we're newly married, so peck on the cheek. "Hello, dear, how are you?" And open the back door, and out jumped Sheba. And his words were, "What on earth is that?" It's Sheba. She's come to live with us. And I went in that moment, wow, okay, probably should have communicated that he was going to get a dog. And for me, it highlighted the fact that for me, I'd always had animals. Animals were a big part of my life, always there, just really important. And for him, he had never had animals, so it was a huge thing. It was a huge adjustment. And there's no preparation time for him. He suddenly acquired a wife who probably, goes off with these great ideas without really thinking them through. And now he's got a dog. So we head home, pretty much in stony silence. And then I think the words were, where's she going to sleep? Yeah, well, I didn't say on the bed. That was pretty much where she ended up later on. But at that time I went, oh, goodness. No, so she's going to sleep in the woodshed. Okay, awesome. Not a problem then. So clear a space in the woodshed, make her a comfy bed, hung out with her. We took her for a walk. He wasn't up to holding the lead. He was still pretending she wasn't there. And I'm like, this is going to be fine. This will be fine. And so she spent the night in the woodshed. And the next morning, when I got up first and went out, busting out to get this dog, very excited and thinking it was all going to be wonderful, I opened the woodshed door and there was this grinning dog and my motor scooter, which was my most beloved possession, called Rosie. She was a step-through scooter, red in colour, and I loved that scooter. And Sheba had managed to destroy the whole seat.
Whoa.
Oh, man, bits of seat everywhere. And I just was a bit gobsmacked, really. I was torn between being devastated about the destruction of my motor scooter and then going, oh, my goodness, I have to cover her tracks and try. How am I going to hide this when I've got to ride the scooter to work this morning? Oh, gosh. So that was pretty much, that set the scene, really, for Sheba's life. She was pretty destructive. She did like anything that was foam, cushion, padded. And if she was left alone on her own for too long, yeah, she'd pretty much eat, anything.
What an introduction.
Yeah. So that was Sheba. So it was quite the long, sort of slow, protracted acceptance of Sheba into the household because there were a number of misdemeanors involving destruction of property. But, to be honest, and that was why I acquired her in the first place. So, as I look back on my life moving forward, I always, if you're looking at doing an intervention or rescuing a dog, often there's always a reason why a perfectly lovely dog that presents wonderful with children, wonderful with other animals, there's usually a reason why a perfectly lovely dog has found itself homeless. And I have found in recent years that destruction of property is actually one of the reasons why some dogs are, no longer welcome or not a good fit.
Mm. Yes, sadly.
Yeah.
Sadly, there's a bit of misunderstanding goes around.
Yeah. Like I thought that what was yours was mine. And look, if I didn't have that dog, I'm not sure that I would know as much about dogs as I do today because it was very obvious that, something that had a lot of scent attached to it, okay, a motorbike seat where you sit on it to ride it, there's a lot of scent value that's attached to that because you do a lot of sitting on it. And as is the same with a cushion, like a couch cushion or a pillow, it has a lot of smell and scent attached to it. It starts with, the dog sniffing it, then they poke it, then they poke it a little harder, and then there's a little hole. Then they pick it up, and then it's really good fun when stuff flies out.
That's it.
So,
in other words, deconstruction engineers.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
what's that made out of?
Yeah. Oh, look, it flies.
Yeah, this is fun.
Yeah. So I don't think that, back in the day, we used to have a lot more feather eider downs and feather cushions and, than we do today. So I imagine that, things were even more interesting back then. So that was Sheba's early initiation.
Yeah. Did you have what sort of yard did you have at that stage?
Yeah. So we lived in an old dairy company house. So I worked in town for the local dairy company, and when you worked for them, you were entitled to a staff house, but it was an old rundown. I suppose the equivalent would be an old farmhouse, and there were a number of those all in a row in a street behind an old disused dairy factory, and it was a reasonable sized yard, but it wasn't really fenced. But, this is late 80s. You didn't worry about fences, and the road was pretty quiet, and we had lots of neighbours. So during the day, she cruised around and went visiting all the neighbours, all the kids, and your dog was just out wandering around, and then when you came home, there it was.
So it's like being part of the community.
It was. Look, and now looking back on that, I'm appalled with my own behaviour and the fact that I made so many assumptions that, there's traffic. There was traffic over there. It wasn't a lot of traffic, but people were coming in and out of their driveways. There were lots of people, and I didn't really know them. They were just sort of neighbours, just people you said g'day to. And, there's a lot of trust that went on with, see you later, I'm going to work and you'll have to stay here. And we had chickens as well. So, and they used to wander around. What was I thinking? with a lurcher, a dog with a lot of prey drive. I wouldn't do it now. I know way too much now. But I was very naive back then.
So were there incidences with the chickens?
Well, there may have been. There were just, you'd have 5 chickens and then you'd have 3. And, there was no evidence that anything went wrong with the chickens. I think there may have been one minor incident, but nothing obvious. Okay. But, we lived in a neighbourhood where, people quite often there would be chickens in crock pots and chicken soup. But, that was sort of, you had chickens and, yes, you got them for their eggs, but sometimes it was a bit more than that.
And causes unknown.
Yeah, but, I didn't see anything, but she was a really clever dog. So, and I don't know whether it's a sign of dogs now that, she was a bit more clever and a bit more shrewd. But, dogs had a lot more freedom then because they could.
True. So did Sheba have like a doggy gang that she sort of hung around with, or?
Yeah, there were a few, like we would call them rough. There were some very rough dogs that she used to hang around with. And people will say, oh, she lived in a rough neighbourhood, and yeah. But, nothing untoward ever really happened. She didn't always do as she was told. So I think as part of the whole, because Murray's still getting his head around this whole living with a dog thing. And, if we leave her too long unsupervised and go off to do anything, she eats something, rips something up. Actually, there was quite the story about that. I have got another story about what she ate. That was pretty spectacular. So it was decided that I'd better take her to dog obedience classes, which I did. And I went to the local obedience classes, and that was run by a very strict, short, feisty lady who was quite elderly and had a cane. I remember the cane because she used to use that not to scare dogs, but to crack you on the arm if you weren't doing something right, or she'd gesticulate with her stick. She was quite formidable, really. I remember her name, but I won't.
Well, it sounds like it's a good method for getting the point across, because as you know, it's not too much. It's not that much about training the dogs. It's really training the people.
Yes. But, back then, dogs did as they were told. And I'm not saying that today I agree with that training methodology. And look, to be honest, I don't think it did Sheba much good because she didn't really care. At the end of the day, she was compliant to a point. She was a really soft dog. So, shouting, repeating herself multiple times, gesticulating, she didn't really care. It's too late anyway. She's already, had fun with whatever. But she did become more sociable after we went to the dog club and did decide that other dogs running, chasing, playing with other dogs was far more fun than coming when her name was called.
Okay. Yep.
So, and that only happened, funnily enough, after she went to the dog club. So, interesting that. She decided that, they could be friends and not listen. So we moved towns partway through that, and I changed dog clubs. And we started a different journey where it was slightly different training methods, and we got better, actually. We got better. We improved. We improved so much that we started competing in obedience, which given her, she was not a very obedient dog because she used to like running off and she would rip everything up. So, but she went on to compete in dog shows, start me on a journey that I'll be forever grateful for. And we won a lot of obedience competitions, and she was an obedience champion.
Oh, nice.
So, yes, misdemeanors and all, never give up, as they say. But the other thing that she did was she did a lot of different sports. Around that time, we hooked up with a group of other enthusiastic people who had Lurcher type dogs as well. And we started a sled dog racing group. So I know that's similar to a particular passion of yours.
Yes, it is. Yep.
So sled dog racing was pretty much, we're in New Zealand on land, obviously, and there's not a lot of bush or snow. So we adapted old BMX bikes. So if you can imagine grown adults on an old BMX bike that's had the pedals taken off and has been sort of modified into a scooter. There were none of these fancy scooter. You didn't buy anything. There was no buying scooters or what do they call them? Mondooring equipment or whatever fancy bits of equipment have now since been invented. No, we had to make everything. So it was pretty much visiting, dumps and giveaway piles and the newspapers for, kids' bikes and all of that was made. There were quite often, working bees on a Sunday afternoon where people were welding and making stuff. And it was the same with the harnesses. I was sitting there sewing harnesses and fitting harnesses on dogs, making them out of webbing and sheepskin. And we became it was a really good fun dog club, and we became a sled dog racing club. And we went on to, everybody went on to do really well with that. So that was another fun thing that she did. And she was a great dog. So
do I guess around that time were there like many of the sled dog racing clubs around, or you guys were like the trailblazers in that sort of area?
Wow. Now here's the thing. So all of the racing dogs, most of the racing dogs were Arctic breeds. So they were pretty much Siberian Huskies and Malamutes.
Yep.
Along comes Sheba. She was our first dog. We later went on to get other dogs who were also crossbreeds. And what do you know? These crossbreeds start beating the Arctic breeds. Yeah. Didn't go down very well. And so our little sled dog club that we set up pretty much was for the minority breeds, I guess.
Love it.
And they were all, for the most part, Lurchers, all Lurcher mixes. So, greyhounds, whippets. We later got another dog, and she was a Springer Spaniel whippet cross. She was super fast. So that was kind of where Sheba took us. And funnily enough, what do you know, a greyhound cross was pretty quick.
Yeah.
So she got to do the things that she really loved. And we managed to find the thing that suited her personality and her strengths. And I guess, it taught us a lot as young marrieds, because we got married in the time when we didn't have a lot of money. And you made do with what you had. Your furniture was all secondhand. And, I guess you just made your own fun with what you had. Hence the, oh, look, someone's turfed out a perfectly good BMX. Let's take all the bits off it. So, and then, we started with like one dog, and then we were running a 3-dog racing team. So that went on for a number of years. And then, the dogs got a little bit older, and we started having a family, and the 4 o'clock starts and the morning became less enjoyable. And, so Sheba then went on to become a family dog and teach the next generation about dogs and, what they can do. She was a great dog. She kept so many secrets for the kids and,
nice.
Just loved being around the kids and adapted well to that.
Gonna ask, can you remember if there was a noticeable difference after Sheba was doing some of the sled dog stuff in her just general behaviour and obedience with you?
Well, a little story about the worst destructive thing she had. So we had a little Mini. So that was our car. So I used to ride this motor scooter. Now that has it has a taped up seat, duct taped seat for a number of years, which was a little problematic when the tape started to roll. But, anyway. And then we had a Mini was our other car. That was the car we had for a long, long time. And whenever, I would work in town, and so would my husband. And we might decide that we would go and have a few drinks after work at the working men's club. Well, one of us would have to go home and get the dog, and we would bring the dog back. Like the dog would be in town. Now, I can't remember why, but she was left in the car. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the evening went a little longer than normal. And on this one particular night, we'd had, a few drinks after work. Coming home, obviously we haven't had that many drinks because we're able to drive. Come out to the car in the car park. We're having a laugh. We go, oh, that's really funny. Somebody's put toilet paper inside the car. Oh, because, you couldn't lock the car. Like, it doesn't lock, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it had actually been stolen. I'm not sure even if we used a key in the ignition anymore, because I think that was gone. But anyway, so that was the car we had. And we're laughing because, people would often play practical jokes, put things in your car. And we come out and there's all these streamers in the car, thinking this is a hoot, this is really funny. And here's Sheba grinning from ear to ear, open the car door. She shredded the roof lining.
Oh, no.
It's just hanging down like streamers.
Oh, no.
I can still remember my husband's face. So that was a pretty significant misdemeanor. So, yeah, just kind of rolled up the streamy bits and stuffed it back up. And I don't think there were too many words mentioned. What can you say, really? So, so that was, and then that was just before we'd moved And then we moved, and I start this new dog club, and then we get into sled dog racing, and yeah, we pretty much had found the thing she enjoyed, and there was a definite improvement in behaviour. Well, there were less misdemeanours, So, yeah, it just goes to show you sometimes you just got to find the thing that taps into the dog's strengths and gives you a bit of an outlet. And, how great is that?
Oh, absolutely. They're doing what they love, and
yeah, exactly.
They look around, and their best friend in the world is along for the ride.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same with she competed a little bit in agility, but look, my legs are pretty short, and that was a greyhound cross. That was back in the day when pretty much agility courses were in a big circle, and there were lots of different obstacles. But two of my favourites were what we called the pause box. So it was a square box where the dog had to sit in there for 5 seconds, which was great because it gave you time to catch up and have a breather. And the other piece of equipment that was great was a table. It was called a table, and the dog had to jump onto it and stay there for, I think that was 10 seconds. So there were 2 opportunities where you could catch up to your dog, have a breather, get yourself sorted and take off again. Well, they were gone by the end of the 80s. So our sort of agility career took a bit of a dive, when the pause box and the table left. And I do miss them even now, I have to say. So, yeah, look, agility is great is a great outlet for dogs as well, like her. But, it's interesting because those kinds of breeds are fantastic in a straight line, running in a straight line, and they get in their rhythm, and they're in their rhythm, and you're there, and it's amazing. It's awesome. You would know what that's like, that feeling that you have when you're both connected. But in agility, there's lots of turning, and you really, it's involves a bit more steering than just getting into a rhythm. So it's a completely different sort of connection. It's, that's a bit more fly by the seat of your pants. So, a little less calming. So I can see how, being in the bush and all of that, it fits in far better with the relaxed dog ethos.
How was she medical-wise? Were there any vet visits or any sort of like problems?
Well, I think I said earlier that Sheba was a dog, really interesting dog. And, back then it was very common and pretty much the norm to have dogs that were 5 or 6 mixes of a breed. Today, that's relatively uncommon. So, we refer to it as hybrid vigor. And honestly, I've had lots of dogs that would have been that many crosses in them, and they are an interesting eclectic mix and look, but they are probably, it's very hard to compare because we live a different life.
That's true.
We feed our dogs different diets. We don't have as much access to open areas unless we're like you and we really literally do go bush. And we're just not doing the same out and about rough and ready, rugged stuff with our dogs. So, is that part of it? Is it the diet? Back then we were a rural family, so we had, our own meat that we used to grow, if you like. And, we were probably a bit more holistic in our diet. Here where we live now, we're a little off the beaten track. It's very hard to get, fresh meat. Like they tell you it's fresh, but I haven't grown it. Is it? I don't know that it is.
Fresh-ish.
And I don't know what it's been fed. So, like when you're looking at your own paddock with your own stock in it, you know exactly what's going on. So there's a lot of that sort of trust around now. You know, I don't know, but dogs, I do know that, look, I've had probably, I'm not sure, 11, 12 maybe, maybe more dogs. I'm not going to count them up. Since Sheba, she was our first. And like I say to you, my poor husband, we've been married 38 years, and he spent 6 weeks of his married life without an animal. So he's not sure it'll ever happen again. I doubt it. I can't imagine it. You know, but yeah, it's certainly different. Dog breeds, the way we live our life, the way dogs are, it's different.
Absolutely. It's a different era, a whole lot of other factors involved.
Yeah, and I don't know whether it's me getting old, but I look back, I worried less about what my dogs were doing. I wasn't quite so hyper-vigilant with their interactions. There were less disagreements around dogs, but I don't know, and I don't really know why. I have a few ideas. I mean, maybe that's related to human behaviour and, you know, what we think is permissive and what we allow dogs to do and how we allow them to interact. I don't know. Like it's like I say, it's a different time. The way I live my life with my dogs today is so different to the way I used to live my life, you know, in the 80s and 90s.
Absolutely, yep. Different era, and yes.
Yeah. And the dogs I have now, you know, I don't know that they're as resilient as the dogs I had back then. Like, things would happen, you know, like I think dogs today have a bit more of a lower startle response. They get a bit trigger stacked with too many noises, being overwhelmed by a lot of things. Why is that? You know, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that, you know, is it that I wasn't aware that a dog was going through that, so I wasn't, you know, being mindful of that. And now, you know, I've educated myself. I've made myself learn a lot about dog behaviour and how dogs respond to things. Am I just more in tune now, and I see things that I didn't see before?
Yeah, well, I think you used a good word before when you said they're resilient, because that covers a whole lot of things when you drill down into that, the word and the meaning. But
well, it's like, for example, here's an example of what I think of in terms of resilience, and you'll relate to this. So when we were training sled dogs, you've got them on a line and they're attached as a team in a line to a bicycle safely. And one of the things that a dog needs to be able to do to look after themselves and for it to be safe is, if the lead goes under their leg, they need to be able to pick up their leg while they're running and untangle themselves. So many times now I see people walking along the street with their dog, and that, you know what I'm going to say, and the dog is sniffing or something or slowed down and the person hasn't, and the dog's just put its leg over the lead. I see it all the time. And the person, instead of keeping moving and just making it go a bit slack and letting the dog step back over the lead, no, stop. I need to fix it and I need to untangle it. And I think, why are you making that a problem? Why don't you just let the dog work out how to step its leg over its own lead and understand that? Why don't you give them the skills to work that out and have the resilience to deal with it when you're just walking down the street and it's not really any drama? And if the dog has got its leg over the lead like that, why is it a problem for you? Like, so I have these little conversations in my head now, and, you know, a lot of what I learnt hands-on, watching and observing dogs working as a team as sled dogs and training them how to become part of that team, even something as simple as that, taught me so much about dogs, what they're capable of, and then as humans, how we just faff about and we've stuffed up the dog even being able to work out how to do something as simple as that.
Mm-hmm. Not going to argue that. Sometimes it's people have got to learn just to give them a bit of time to sort things out themselves.
Exactly. And, you know, I think that's another thing you've tapped into is that I think that dogs are starting to mature. It's taking longer for dogs to reach their full mental maturity. I don't know why that is either, but that's just another observation. But I can remember, you know, when I had my dogs before, and Sheba was a perfect example. We got her as a 6-month-old delinquent puppy, if you like, and really destructive with lots of bad habits. That's how she'd be described now. And she barked a lot. So, you know, she probably, you know, wouldn't have suited everybody. And I can see if she hadn't come to us, there was a fair amount of carnage, let's be honest. You know, there were probably a couple of couches and, you know, a motorbike seat and the roof of a car. You know, if that happened today, the cost of those items, you know, and the carpet, I forgot about the new carpet. That's a pretty hefty bill.
True,
yeah.
But sometimes I think it's different people have a different values and ideas, and what's acceptable in one household is not necessarily acceptable in another. But as long as both those households are happy with the general rules, then there's no drama.
Right. That's exactly right. But, you know, in saying that, I've learned so much about setting a household up with safe places for children, for babies, with puppies, for older dogs. And, you know, Sheba was a big part of teaching me that, you know, and like dogs need to be able to be left on their own and don't eat my house.
Yes,
but at the same time, there needs to be a balance of, you know, appropriate exercise for that particular dog.
Yep.
So, you know, I'm not going to go out and get a highly driven greyhound mix anytime soon. Well, not until I'm retired. I'll probably have to do a bit of talking to get, you know, my husband across the line with that one.
We'll leave that one for later.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned a few things that she ate. One of the questions I ask everyone is and you may have already answered this one already, to answer the question or complete the sentence, I can't believe my dog ate. Has there been something else?
No, let's just go with the roof of my car.
The roof of the car, yeah, that's a unique one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Off the top of your head, one of the happiest moments that you spent with Sheba?
Well, this will surprise you. The do nothing moments. When you're just sitting there watching the world go by with the dog's head in your lap.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
You know, she won so many prizes, did some amazing things, taught lots of people, lots of life lessons. But for me, those are the best moments.
Oh, really, really, really nice. Apart from the eating, which we've had a little bit of, did she have any other peculiar habits?
No, but don't you think that's enough? No, actually, no. Interestingly enough, the dogs I have now, like the dogs I've had in later years, they're the ones that have some strange weirdisms and quirky habits. But no, pretty much No, I can't recall any peculiarities that she had other than, being quite destructive.
Mm-hmm. How was she with maintenance? And I know there was probably less sort of like grooming and maintenance back then, but do you have any sort of like dramas or anything like that, or like the bath time?
I don't know whether this is X-rated or not. So she was a brindle, short-coated, very short-coated dog. So bathing, back then, bathing was done in the family bathroom. Mm-hmm. And, she didn't much like it, but I'm sorry, it has to happen. So it was sort of carried out in a matter-of-fact manner. And she was compliant, and then she got treats afterwards. Now, I know so much more about why there was so much shampoo and water up and down the walls, and I'd handle that very differently. But back then it was, okay, so get in the bath, you need to have a bath. And she didn't really like smelling nice. So she, as soon as she was bathed, she'd go out and roll in something disgusting. Yeah. So pretty much we compromised a lot of the time. And I used to use wipes and, a bit of that deodorant spray. But she did have a few problems, and this is where I'm saying, is it X-rated? And I hope no one's eating. But she had a few problems with her anal glands. However, that was when I learned how you can empty them yourself. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not for the faint-hearted, but that did save a few vet bills, which is another important thing. Like if you can deal with your dogs every day, first aid, like checking their ears, grooming, washing, bathing, nails, being aware of early signs of illness, you can save yourself so much money with vet bills.
Absolutely.
So, and a lot of my early dogs taught me a lot of that. Mm-hmm. Probably the worst thing that she ever had were broken toenails, and torn off down to the quick, so they would bleed a lot. Mm. And, I can remember the first time that happened. Rushing her off to the vet and then learning fairly quickly, some basic tips to deal with that.
What's your go-to for putting on the end of the quick?
Soap.
Soap, okay.
Yeah. So, usually that one works if it's not too bad. So just like a cake of soap, usually, and stick it, and it would stop it bleeding. Yeah. I'm not sure that's recommended, a recommended veterinary treatment. So you might want to check that one out. Or put a disclaimer at the end of the podcast.
Did you travel much around with Sheba?
Oh, well, back in the day, so we've got the Mini. We don't have a lot of money. And, so we didn't go away a lot. We used to go camping a little bit. And if we couldn't take her, then, we would, she would go into boarding, which is very different to boarding now. And, she was fine. Mm. So, we did, she used to sit in the back seat of the Mini.
Yeah, I'm picturing that.
Yeah. It's quite the picture. I'm sure they've made back seats a lot wider now just because of, the number of dogs. But, yeah.
I know it's a bit of like anthropomorphizing, but in your opinion, her favourite place apart from your home and where you were?
She's one of those den dogs. Like to dig a den hole. And they were circular holes. She had a couple of them, and she would just follow the sun around.
Okay, yep.
Pretty much. Yeah. It's probably her favourite place to lie.
Oh, no, very nice. And what about if you did go away with her, do you think she had a preference for a particular area?
Oh, just, if you were sitting somewhere, just, lie on your foot. She was one of those, like a leaner lie on your body part, on your foot or somewhere.
Mm. Being the short coat, how did she go in the cooler months?
Oh, she was fine. Like, we did used to, put dog coats and stuff on her because, it's New Zealand, and she slept inside. But yeah, she had quite the range of dog coats. But, dogs, they tend to adapt anyway, and their fur thickens up. Like she didn't not have an undercoat, but yeah, she just adapted to the colder climate. But, you find if you have a warm blanket and your dogs, their pads on their feet are warm and their chest is warm, and there's not a draft on them, your dog's warm.
Mm. Is there anything else coming to mind about Sheba that you'd like to share?
Only that I didn't realise how awesome she was until she was gone.
Mm.
Like, take the time, to reflect and remember those moments when they're still around.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think often, even when you have those nightmare moments, looking back, I can remember, it wasn't the dog being naughty. It was humans understanding why she did what she did, and replacing that with another positive outlet. So I think, take the time, remember all those awesome moments, and, enjoy them while they're around, because unfortunately they don't hang around for long enough.
No, never long enough.
I'm just really pleased that all of my children who are now adults got the time to know her and remember her. And we have, some awesome photos of her with all of them.
Nice.
So that's the other thing. There's no excuse to not be taking photos now. You've got mobile phones. We didn't have those back in the olden days.
Yeah. Now, like so many people that I've spoken to, and many that have been on the podcast, you indicated before that after you got Sheba, and eventually that changes the course of your life and what you do. So you want to sort of tell a little bit about where that went and what you're doing now?
Oh, yes. Didn't she just? So I'd always been a bit of an animal fancier, and animals have always played a really big part of my life. I didn't realise that until sort of looking back as you get a bit older. But Sheba took me to a dog club where I met lots of awesome people, and I became a voluntary dog trainer, and I guess developed this passion for working with animals and people. And I became a life member of one dog club, and joined another dog club and started dog clubs, and realised that animals have so much to give, and people sometimes just need to stop and listen to the lessons that animals are trying to teach us. And through that journey, that's pretty much being involved in a dog club and having so many, human and animal mentors, I became a dog trainer. And I've probably been a professional dog trainer full-time now, probably 15, 20 years. I did it before then, but it was voluntary. But now I spend most of my days with people and dogs, helping humans understand dogs.
Nice.
And what an awesome life that is.
Absolutely.
So that's what I'm doing, and I'll do it for as long as my mind and body allow me to. And yeah, just it's the best job ever.
So if people wanted to see more of what you do or get in touch, where should they look?
Well, I have actually, for those people who aren't local, there's some online training that I've made available, and I've also written a series of books. So that all of that information is available on the website, and that's www.animaltalent.com.au.
Louise, it has been a pleasure chatting with you and hearing all about Sheba.
It's been awesome. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was really good fun.
Thank you. I look forward to catching up with you very soon. Take care.
Absolutely. Coffee's on you, though.
Yeah, I can do that. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed the show. Extra thank you to our new listeners in Talavera de la Odon in Spain and also in St. Ignatius in the US. Thank you, and I hope you continue to enjoy how awesome dogs are. If you would like to leave a review, it would be appreciated on whatever platform you are listening on. And feel free to join us in the Facebook group. Until next week, stay safe and remember, your dog is family.